On this video, I thought I would just read the Greek text with a translation and a verse-by-verse commentary in the Gospel of John. I'm only going to hold it to 10 minutes, and I'm going to stop wherever I'm at. So it begins, in arche ein halagas, kai halagas ein prastantaan, kai taas ein halagas. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face with God, and the Word was God. Three things about Jesus Christ. He is eternal. He was in the beginning with God, or he is eternal. He was always in the beginning with the Father in the second person of the Holy Trinity. And thirdly, he was and is fully God. We've already talked about the Memra, is in the back of John's mind, I think. The Targumic translation of the Aramaic word Memra interchanged with God all the way through. We see this in especially some of the Targum texts of the Hebrew scriptures. Verse 2, Hutas ein enarche prastantaan. This one was in the beginning face to face with God. No one else, this one, John is saying, was in the beginning face to face with God. Panta di autua genita, kai choris autua genita, udechen chageganin. All things came to be through him, and without him came to be not one thing which has come to be. In other words, he is the agent of creation. All things came to be through the Word, through Jesus. Everything, the huge universe, anything we can think of, came to be through him, John is saying. A parallel passage is Colossians 1 and Hebrews chapter 1 as well. In auto zoe ein, kai zoe ein taphos ton anthropon. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Jesus is the light. In him, John is saying, was the light. And that light was the light of men. Throughout the Gospel of John, we're going to see light talked about. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And over, like in John 8. So in him was the light in a dark world. And that light, we'll see, shines in the darkness. And light, by the way, I think looks at the understanding, the truth that Jesus possesses, John is saying. Kai taphos in te skatia fine, kai he skatia alta u katelevin. The light in the darkness keeps on shining, and the darkness did not take it down. Two thoughts here. The light is continuing to shine, and the darkness did not comprehend it or overcome it. There's a double meaning that we're looking at here in verse 5 in Katelavin. The light did not overcome it, it did not comprehend it. The darkness did not overcome it or comprehend it. And because of the resurrection, the light continues to shine in the midst of this darkness. And that light, of course, is Jesus Christ. Then John goes on. Agenita anthropas apestamenas parata u anima auto Ioannes. There came a man, having been sent from God, his name was John. So John had a beginning. Creation had a beginning. And so here he's contrasting the Word who was eternally with John who had a beginning. There was a man, and he was sent from God. His name was John. John means God is, the Lord is gracious. Hutas eothen, verse 7, eis marturia hena marturese peritu photas, hena pantes pistusosin di autu. This one came for a witness, that he might testify concerning the light, in order that all might believe through him. John's purpose was to witness, give testimony concerning the light, that all might believe through him. But he was not the light. He's only here to show the light. Notice verse 8. Ukein ekenas tafos, al chenem al terese peritu photas. That is, he was not the light, but he came in order that he might testify concerning the light. His only purpose was to testify concerning the light, which is Jesus Christ. Ein tafos ta alethenan, chafotidze panta anthropon, kamenan estan kosmon. He was the genuine light, that is Christ, which is enlightening every man coming into the world. In other words, by his coming into the world, he is showing where the truth is, and he's enlightening every man by his coming into the world. Speaking of Christ, I believe. Into cosmo ein kai hakasmas diautu agenita kai hakasmas autan uk egno. That is, he was in the world, and the world through him came to be, and the world did not know him. In other words, he was in the world, and the world really was created by him, but the world of humankind did not know him. Eis ta idia eothen, verse 11, he came and do his very own things of creation. Kai hoi idioi autan u parelaven. But his very own did not receive him. And I think John is talking here about the Jewish, or about the religious leaders at that time. Jesus was Jewish, but his own religious leaders, Jewish religious leaders, I think, did not receive him. And that's where we get hoi idioi, his very own, I'm thinking. Jesus being Jewish and his very own did not receive him. I think that's the thought John is making. However, chasoi de elevan autan, edu ken autois exousian tekna the ugenestai. Tois pistu usin eis ta anima autu. As many as received him, though, he gave to them the authority to become children of God, to those who believe into his name. But as many as were willing to receive him, he gave to them special authority to become the children of God. And those who become that are those that are given eternal life by believing into his name and what his name means. And then, hoi uk ex chematon, ude ex telematas sarkas, ude ex telematas andras, al ex uagenethesan. He who, not out of the bloods, not out of human bloodline, nor out of the will of the flesh, that is, by human desire, or the desire maybe from a fleshly perspective, nor ek telematas andras, nor out of the will of a man, maybe to have a son. It's not that kind of begottenness that he's talking about. Al ek theouagenethesan, but out of God they were begotten. In other words, he's talking about a new birth, a spiritual birth that comes to those not out of bloods, nor out of the will of the flesh, nor out of the will of a man, to have a child, let's say. It's a divine birth. It's a spiritual birth. And then verse 14, Kai halaga sarx agenita, kai askenosin in hemin, kai eta asamatha tain doxan autu, doxan hos monogenus, para petras, pleres caritas kai aletheas. That is, the Word, the Memra, the Word, became flesh and pitched his tent among us, askenosin. He tabernacled, he pup-tented among us. And we gazed upon his glory, just like in Exodus 40, when we saw the glory of God. We gazed upon his glory. Now the glory of Christ, the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. the rabbis said that when the glory of God departed in Ezekiel, it would come back when Messiah would come. And I think John, as an old man, is now describing how the glory of God has come back in Jesus Christ. And so in verse 15, Ioannes marture periatu kai kekragen legon, hutas ein han epan, ha epistomu kamenos imprasten mu geganen, hate protas mu ein. That is, John testifies concerning him, and he has cried, saying, "This was he of whom I said, the one who comes behind me has become before me, for he is prior to me. He is first." In other words, Jesus, being eternal, comes before John. I think John is saying. And we received out of his fullness. Verse 16. Hante ectu pleromatas autu hemes pantes elabamen kai karen ante caritas. Out of his fullness, we have all received, and then we've received grace in the place of grace, like grace continued, grace compacted, grace in the place of grace. It's all of grace, I think John is saying. Hatechanamas di mouseos edathe hekaris kachealetheia dia Jesu Christu agenata. That is, because the law, that was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. It's like in the Psalm 117, where God is grace and truth. And now that has come in, can I say, the incarnation through Jesus Christ. And so verse 10, the an udes oraken popate, managenes theas ha on es ta kopan, tu patras ekenas exegesata. No one has ever seen God, but the only begotten God, the one being in the bosom of the Father, that one has exegeted him. No one has ever seen God, but we now have seen him. And as later in John, Jesus will say, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so the one who is in the bosom of the Father, the one being in the bosom, that is, we're looking at a unique relationship, the only one that Jesus had, because he is the eternal Son, and he was always in the bosom, that place of honor with the Father, and he's still there today in the resurrection, and he has exegeted or brought forth the Father. If you've seen me, Jesus said, you've seen the Father.